RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave on RxMuscle.com. This is your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementations, IFBB pros, competitions, life, whatever's on your mind, it is all on the table. This show is sponsored by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. So now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, first, your July 4th festivities. Second, right now, a July 4th special running on speciesnutrition.com. Why don't you tell the audience more about it?
I was battling with my wife, but she's like, we got to put up a great Species Nutrition discount for 4th of July. It's the celebration of our country. How old is America now? Do we even know? It's
1776, 2017. I'm going to have to look that one up. I'll get back to you.
In 1976, this is a true story, Sid. I was in first grade, and we had the bicentennial celebration, 200 years, this country was, and I played George Washington. They made me George Washington. I had the George Washington hat, and I marched, and all the kids had to march behind me. And I remember that I can't remember what I did yesterday, but I remember being George Washington on the bicentennial celebration of our country. And so for this celebration this year, 2017, I am giving Species Nutrition's Protolyzed Protein Pudding, 30 grams per serving of protein for $19.99, Sid. It's less than half the cost that we normally charge for it. So you guys can't go wrong. The only thing you can do is not buy it fast enough, because we have a limited amount of it that we are selling. So once we're out of the inventory, you're sorry, don't call me up crying. I warned you. I know the stuff's going to go fast. We've already been selling it all weekend, so we've already sold about like 300 tubs of it. We probably have another 100 or 2 left. So don't wait. If you want to try Protolyzed protein pudding, or if you've tried it before and you love it, this is your chance. It's never going to be this low again, I promise you.
To answer your question, as of yesterday, the United States of America is 240 years old. On that note, we get to the questions. If you want to join us, you can join us in the Muscle Central Forum on RxMuscle.com, on our Instagram page. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can ask your questions on the chat box on the right-hand side of the video player, our Facebook page, or tweeting questions using hashtag AskDave. Let's go to our Facebook page and go to Tall Man. Dave, what are your thoughts on desiccated liver pills? I was thinking about taking them in between meals for an added source of protein, plus all the other health benefits I've read about. I know old school bodybuilders from the 70s took them. How can you go wrong with something that's been around for so many years?
I'm not a huge desiccated liver pill person. The liver really is the junk box of the body. It pulls all the toxins out. I know they defat the desiccated, that's why it's called desiccated. They remove the fat from the liver pills, but who the hell knows what else is in these things? We don't know where they're getting the liver from. It's probably like chicken livers or beef livers that they're kind of grinding up. And I'm just not a huge fan. It doesn't have a lot of protein in it. It's not a great source for protein, that's for sure. It's got some vitamins in it, but you could take a regular vitamin supplement. You got to remember, people used desiccated liver before there were any supplements on the market. It was like one of the originals. Now we have very purified supplements. We don't need to go back and use the old junk. You know what I mean? No one's using, unless they're restoring an old car, no one's using a Chevy engine from 1970 in a brand new 2017 Mustang. We're not doing that because it's not as good. We use the new technology, the fuel-injected engines, the turbocharged and supercharged engines. So I think that it's a mistake to use it. I don't think it really has a place in bodybuilding lifestyle anymore.
Let's go to train_insane. If D-ball hurts my stomach, is it a guarantee that Anadrol will?
I'd say so. Anadrol is, I've never been able to do more than a couple weeks on Anadrol. It's not that it hurt my stomach, I just felt bad on the stuff, which means that, your body's not processing it well. It's putting a strain on your GI tract, especially your liver. So to me, orals just, they have a place, I guess, but a very limited place, put it that way. And if you don't respond well to taking orals, then don't use them. There's so many injectables out there that do the same thing, if not more than these orals do, that there's no reason to have to use orals.
So we get this question quite often. I know Chris Aceto has been asked this many, many times, but Let's address it again. The Mad Hatter wants to know what's with bodybuilders and muffins.
You know, Chris Aceto ruined bodybuilding with his stupid freaking muffins. Chris doesn't eat. If you know Chris and you hang around him, Johnny can tell you this. He eats maybe 2 meals a day if he's lucky, and the 2 meals are tiny. He'll eat 1 sushi roll, and that's a big meal for him. So he likes his muffins. That's like a treat for him because like he's always like in the state of starvation. So I guess in his day when he was bodybuilding, when he would be low because he wasn't eating enough food and he ate a muffin, he felt a little fuller, carved him up a little bit. So when his athletes get a little too low or too flat, whereas I might send him to McDonald's or have him to eat a piece of pizza, he gives them a muffin. So people think that there's magic in the muffins. It's like the anabolic chicken over there in Kuwait. So, a lot of people, I have guys that ask me, hey, I'm dying. I know you're dieting me for a show, but can I have a muffin pre-workout? I'm like, no, you can't. It has sugar in it. Now, off season, if you like a muffin, eat a muffin. I'm not a big junk food addict. I don't really eat sugary foods. Maybe if you make your own protein muffins, that would be okay. But going to the store and eating a brand muffin, most of those are loaded with sugar. So depending on if, like I said, if you're in the off season and that's what you like to eat it. I mean, but it's not, I wouldn't call it a pre-workout meal by any means.
Matt had a cardio before weight training or vice versa?
Here's the rule. Cardio is done in a depleted state. That means either first thing in the morning, before you've eaten, or after you train. Those are the best 2 times to do cardio because your blood sugar is low, your glycogen levels are low. So you're going to burn more fat. Weight training is never done in a depleted state. So if you wake up in the morning and you want to go do, your weights, you better have a meal first or a shake. Now, let's say you want to do both in the morning. Now, I know people that get up, they do cardio on an empty stomach, they eat a meal or drink a shake, and then they go to the gym and they train with weights. That's fine too. So you eat before you do your weights, you try to do cardio in a depleted state. You don't want to go to the gym, do your cardio, and then do your weights because now you're doing your weights in a depleted state and you're doing your cardio in a filled up state. That's the opposite way when you want to do it.
All right, so we get our random variety of questions on this show, and again, we talk mostly about diet, we talk mostly about training, supplementation, so on and so forth. Samson8659 has a question that I would guess is unique to men.
Yeah.
He wants to know, HGH injections in your junk to make it big, is it possible?
Well, if you can't inject GH into your biceps and make them bigger, because we know that the GH goes into the bloodstream and it will affect the whole body, injecting it into your penis certainly won't make your penis bigger, all right, if that's what the question is. Same thing with IGF-1. Now, do we know for sure if taking growth hormone and IGF-1 systemically will actually cause some type of penile growth? I don't think there's been a study done on it. I think if it would have happened, we would have a lot of reports because there's guys out of there using an awful lot of GH, and I don't think that their quote junk is getting any bigger. So I'd have to say no on that.
El Duraco, why is it that when I take Anadrol minutes later I feel tired?
Because Anadrol is very stressful to the system. It usually, when I would take Anadrol, an hour or 2 later, I would feel like my eyes would almost be like getting pulled closed because they were so swelled up. And it makes you hold a lot of water. So Anadrol can obviously, if you're carrying around extra water, that's going to make you feel tired right off the bat. And I always tell people, whenever they, I got a lot of guys on off-season programs, and they contact me after about 3 weeks, and they're like, I'm exhausted all the time. I don't know, is it the diet you put me on? So listen, you gained 20 pounds in the last 3 weeks. Probably, 10 of that's water. But even if 10 of it's not, and 10 is solid, that's pretty good. But imagine if I strapped a 25-pound weight plate to your back and told you to walk around with it all day. You'd be exhausted too. So you have to understand that weight gain in and of itself can make you tired.
Let's go to Train Without Limits. Dave, what do you think about PCT? And then parentheses it goes Clomid and HGH or Aromasin with some tests so the sex drive does not drop to 0.
You want to do PCT while you're on testosterone? That's not PCT. You got to clean out. If you're cleaning out and you're taking Clomid and HCG, you're trying to turn your natural body's production back on. Why would you take testosterone on top of that? So your sex drive doesn't drop. It's ridiculous. When you go off testosterone or all the steroids, your sex drive is going to go down a little bit. There's no way about it. Okay, because what's normal before you take anabolics doesn't feel normal after you've taken them. So if you had a good sex drive and then you decided, I'm going to take 1,000 milligrams of testosterone a week, that's a tremendously much higher amount than you naturally produce. You're going to feel a heightened sex drive. When you come off that 1,000 milligrams, okay, even if your natural production kicks on 100%, it's still not going to feel high anymore because you're used to a much higher amount in your system. It takes weeks, sometimes months, before your body reacclimates to the lower amounts, and then that becomes normal. So don't expect to feel great right after you stop. You might feel good the first 2-3 weeks because the stuff is still in your system, but once the testosterone leaves your system and you're a little low, you're not going to feel as good as when you were on. That just comes with the territory. Deal with it.
Let's go to ADZDJ. Dave, would you ever advise dropping sessions on stronger body parts or muscle groups to accommodate a lagging body part and allow it to catch up?
Dropping sessions or drop sets? Is that what the guy was trying to say?
Well, I mean, it's termed as advised dropping sessions on so I'm guessing he means to skip.
Oh, on good body parts? Is that what he's asking?
Yeah.
Oh, people always told me, your legs are so great, don't train them anymore. You don't need to. Just go like 16 weeks without training. I'm like, why? So that my legs can become average? I believe that you can grow a weak body part, whether it be your upper chest, your chest, or your back, and even if you have great legs, while training legs. So you can train legs. Doesn't mean you're going to siphon off the nutrients to your legs and then it's not going to go to your upper body. Just make sure you get enough rest. The reason why a body part is lagging is not because your legs are great and your back is weak. It's because you're not either training it right, okay, or you're not giving it enough rest to recuperate or not giving it enough nutrition. That's the bottom line. Don't stop training a good body part and make it average just because you think you're going to bring up a bigger body part. Okay, I think it's a huge mistake people make.
Let's go to Colton Davis. What is the longest you can run Cytomel, and is there a metabolism quote-unquote lag period when you stop taking it? If so, would it be beneficial to switch from T4 or switch to T4 after Cytomel?
You know, I feel like I don't want to say this because even though it's true, you probably can run Cytomel for 6 months straight and not have a problem when you come off it. I knew a girl, she might be listening to the show, she was taking Cytomel for 3 years straight. And she told me this, and she's like, what should I do? I said, you got to get off of it. She's like, I'm afraid I'm going to crack. I said, look, thyroid hormone works on a feedback loop. If you put T3 into the system, which is active thyroid hormone, your body's not going to produce any. Okay, it's going to shut down natural production. But when you take it away, your body's going to sense that there's a lack of it, and it's going to start producing again. Unless you have a genetic or some kind of a legitimate thyroid problem, taking Cytomel is not going to cause you to have a problem. So this girl stopped. She tapered down like I told her to, and she started producing her own T3 again. Taking T4 will just prolong the problem because once again, if you're putting an exogenous source of thyroid into your body, even though your body still has to convert that to T3, your body's not going to produce its own. So taper down off the Cytomel down to 25 micrograms per day for a week, and then down to 12.5 micrograms per day for a week, and then just go off. A 2-week taper is plenty, believe me.
You're watching Ask Dave on RxMuscle.com, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Right now on SpeciesNutrition.com, Protolize, as part of our July 4th weekend sale, is $19.99. Protolize, 30 grams of protein, $19.99 on SpeciesNutrition.com. Let's go to Castillo_Lewis, and he simply phrased this, but before I phrase the question, this has been sort of going around social media right now. A lot of YouTube, social media commentators in bodybuilding calling others out for this phenomenon, and that is fake weights. You see it all over with training videos and those trying to enhance their overall profile. So Castillo-Lewis wants you, Dave, to talk about fake weights.
It might be a good topic for Iron Rage. Maybe I'll save that for tomorrow. I don't mind the use of fake weights for training videos, where you're trying to display your physique, because you don't want to get hurt, photo shoots, stuff like that. I think that's fine to use it. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you're trying to say I squatted 1,000 pounds and you really didn't, that's one thing. But most people are just putting it up for effect. And that's Hollywood, man. That's fine. If you look like your body can lift 1,000 pounds because you have such a great physique, and you're using less, fake weights because you want to make an impressive, appearance, whether it be in an ad for something or whatever the case may be. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a safety thing. I think it's not bad. If, however, you're lifting fake weights in the gym thinking you're going to get big, you're an idiot. Okay, so. The bottom line is that I don't think there's anything wrong with fake weights. I think when people Photoshop their pictures or try to enhance them, put filters on them, I think that's more deceptive than fake weights, because now you're deceiving people. You really don't look like that. It's a Photoshop job. But if you actually train hard and you have a good physique because you eat right and all that, you could display it doing anything you want. If you want to freaking jump out of an airplane and have it be a virtual reality ride, and you can record that and put it up, who cares? If we're getting wowed by the way you look and it's legitimate, I think that's great.
Good question here by Cash2851. Dave, what are the ways to avoid a quote-unquote bad shot, meaning not getting an abscess or myositis? Granted, all sterile precautions are taken when pinning.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's the best precaution to not getting an infection, obviously, making sure you use alcohol to wipe down the area, using new needles, swabbing the top of the plunger before you stick the needle in. And even if you do all that sterile technique, you could still get an infection. It happens all the time, all right? If the gear is not clean, you can get an infection from that. But if you're using, I'll be honest with you. When I used really good sterile technique, wiping everything down and wiping the bottles, using new needles, I never got an infection. Ever, never. It's always been when I got lazy and maybe I didn't wipe the area down with alcohol. I just took a shot. I was in a rush. Maybe I had a lot of sweat on my skin. That's the times I got the infections. When I practiced sterile technique, very infrequently did I don't even know if I ever got an infection. So most of the time it was my own fault over the years. And look, sometimes when you inject the lower legs, the circulation is not so great there. You can get stagnation. When stagnation occurs, you can get an infection as well. I've been known to get infections in my lower legs from banging my shin in the gym on a piece of exercise equipment and cutting it. And next thing I know, I have an infection. Because for some reason, I don't know, it doesn't look like it. I have no fluid on my ankles, but I have bad circulation down there. I guess I'm very prone to infections in my lower legs. So I have to watch that. And usually what happens is when I do bang my leg or I do something stupid down there, I usually try to wear a pressure stocking to keep the circulation even better, constricted and everything like that, so everything can move better. And once again, you can't necessarily always prevent an infection, but if you use sterile technique, the likelihood of getting one will be much lower.
Ball95, Dave, when you competed, your conditioning was always on point for you personally. What was your most difficult show to diet for, and how were you able to stay focused and not fall off track?
The toughest show is the first show I ever did as a middleweight at 168 pounds, because I never had gone through the process. I wasn't necessarily shredded. It was very difficult for me to get lean. I didn't have a lot of muscle on my body. And the guy who dieted me did a good job, but he tortured me. And to be honest with you, while I was doing it, because I secretly am a little masochistic. I kind of like to torture myself a little bit, but I was so unhappy during this diet, even though I didn't cheat, that I said I would never, ever compete again. I must have said it to 100 people. They're like, and then the bodybuilder said, you'll compete again, don't worry about it. I said, nope, nothing's worth it. Nothing is worth feeling this bad. I remember I was working in the gym. I remember it like it was yesterday. And as soon as the show was over, I ate everything in sight, as you can imagine. I felt good again. And about a week or two later, I was already thinking, well, if I do another show, I'm going to have to put at least 20 pounds or 30 pounds of muscle on. That was and I did. I did 2 years later. But it was a terrible process. It was the toughest show I ever dieted for. But like I said, I think I'm so driven and motivated when I do something I immerse myself so much in it that the process, even though it might not be comfortable, there's no I'm going to cheat now. That's not an option in my vocabulary. I'd go out of the house, I'd go for a drive. You know what I did a lot? I'll tell you what was a great distractor while I was dieting. And it wasn't sitting on the internet, because at that time there wasn't that much to go over on the internet, but that used to get me aggravated. I couldn't really even watch TV. I would clean. I would go to my, today I'm going to clean a closet. I would spend 3 hours cleaning a closet. By the time I finished, I was ready for my next meal. Or I would do my laundry, like everything. I would clean my sheets, everything. Or I would go through my garage, and I made projects for myself. I'm going to paint my door of my bedroom. I would just do projects to keep myself busy this way, especially when I had no job and I was just living the bodybuilding lifestyle. That's the best thing I could tell you to do. Give yourself projects that require tedious activity. So you're completely focused on that. You don't think about your food. By the time your next meal rolls around, you're like, oh, great. 2 hours just passed so quickly. Now I get to eat again, And I even I was painting for a while. I was actually, I had watercolors, and I would try to do all kinds of different artwork. I was so productive when I used to diet, because I wanted to just keep myself occupied, that I wasted very little time, to be honest with you.
It's the Daniel Son Mr. Miyagi approach. Wax on, wax off.
Yes, exactly.
Martin_1 Visage. Dave, during the last 2 weeks of a cut, what type of training split would you recommend to bring out that extremely hard and conditioned look? He goes, 2 examples. 1, the Dorian Yates split, 4 days on and 3 days off, or Franco Columbo split, 6 days on and 1 day off.
I did the Dave Palumbo split, which was 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, and repeat. That was my split.
Let's go to R. Junkin. Another question about Cytomel. Dave, do you think that a lot of IFBB and NPC competitors stay on Cytomel year-round to control body fat? I've also heard in a podcast that you did not use GH in the off-season, that you used IGF for growth instead. Is this true?
To address the Cytomel issue, I don't think that pros stay on it all year round. I know a lot of them. I don't believe that to be true. Most people know you got to go off it after a show. And to address the IGF question, at some point in my career when I realized that IGF worked really well for me, I felt that when I took growth hormone, it actually inhibited the IGF from working as well, because I had a really fast metabolism. So what I would do is I said, you know what, I'll save some money and I'll keep my body fresh. I won't use the GH in the off season. I would just use the IGF-1 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and I used it with insulin because my body responded very well to insulin. I don't think I produced enough insulin. When I would take insulin, I grew well. And I didn't use a lot of it. I used about 10 IUs of Humulin R in the morning, and about another 6 to 8 IUs about 5-6 hours later. And I used that with 10 to 20 micrograms of IGF-1 post-workout, and I grew really well from that. And then when I would start contest prep, I would stop the IGF and I would add the growth hormone. I did that probably for the last, I'd say, 5 years of my career.
Long question here from Qasim Al-Setri. Dave, I can go several days without carbs and still have a great workout and not lose weight, no fat or muscle, without cardio, of course. And for bulking, anything above 100 G makes me fat unless I do 30 minutes every day to stay in decent shape. I'm not natural. However, even with 0 carbs, my blood sugar was so high, so a family doctor recommended glucophage, right? Glucophage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Without running any tests, and yes, it worked. My blood sugar stabilized and pumps are out of this world. But now I can't get a pump whatsoever, even if I'm on cycle. I get so used to not eating carbs, and now I can't cause my blood sugar keeps on dropping. Is it not having a pump that much of an issue that I need to get it fixed, or can I just leave it? I am seeing decent results. I gained 20 pounds of lean muscle, I think, but I still never look full and bulging muscle. Do you think adding GH will give me that look?
Well, if you have a blood sugar problem to start with and that you need glucophage to control, taking GH is going to make it worse, okay? And it's going to put more of a burden on your pancreas. So you might want to consider taking insulin, like a long-acting Lantus insulin. I don't know if any of you guys have watched the insulin special that I did with Colette Nelson a few months back, but we discussed that for people that have poor blood sugar control. The fact that you probably feel good on low carbs diets is because your insulin output or your insulin sensitivity is not good, and probably when you eat low carbs, you have better insulin sensitivity, that's just logical. So you might do better on a higher protein, higher fat, more moderate to low carb diet. And that's to say, a lot of people don't realize you could grow on a low carb diet. I wouldn't do no carbs in the off season, but you could eat, under 100 grams of carbs and still put muscle on, because your body will use what it needs of those carbs to fuel your workouts. And the protein and fat gets used for muscle building. So throwing GH might make the situation worse. You might be going low. You're telling me you're going hypo. You probably really don't need the glucophage. It might be too much for you. I would get a blood sugar monitor, and I would take my blood sugar all day long. First thing in the morning, before meals, after meals, and before bed, and even wake up in the middle of the night, and see what it is on average. If you're running high, maybe you want to try to take a long-acting like Lantus insulin. If you're not running high by eating a lower carb diet, then you're good, and then you don't have to worry about it because you're having good pumps before the glucophage. So I think you're dropping blood sugar too low, and that's causing your issue.
Daddy Swole Muscle wants to know if we're going to be at the USA's.
We will not be at the USA's. I stopped going to the USA's a number of years ago. Johnny and I would go every year, and we would be relegated to the redheaded stepchild, sitting outside in 100-degree heat, waiting for the winners of all the classes to come out so that we can interview them. And I decide, you know what? I'm not going to jump through hoops and beg these people to interview them. I'll just interview the people on our TV show the following Monday after the show, which is what we do now, so that we can actually have a proper way of doing it in a studio, where people are relaxed and we don't have to jump through hoops and try to fight with who's ever there to get interviews. It's not an enjoyable process. People want to leave there anyway and go eat. So I try to get the USA winners after the show is over, and we get them on and we talk about them and we break down the show, Chris and I. So yeah, we won't be there this year. Like I said, it's a long show too. It's like like 2 full days. There's thousands of competitors in these shows, and to me, I'd rather highlight it after the show is over, pick and choose what we want to cover and what we don't want to cover, and this way we don't get stuck there spending a fortune and just being miserable the whole weekend, basically. So, but I have to say, I do love that show. I think it's a great show. If you guys ever want to go out, it's a good excuse to go to Vegas. It's a fun show to watch. I always enjoyed competing in that show. And like I said, it's a well-run show. I highly encourage people, if you're on the West Coast or you want to make a little trip out there, it's probably going to be 110 degrees there. Usually it is at the end of July, but to me, it holds a spot in my heart. It was my first big national show that I did back in 95. 95 was actually in Denver, Colorado, but then in 96 it went, 96 it went to, I think it went to Vegas in 96. It was in Marina del Rey or Santa Monica at one point for one of those years, but then it's been in Vegas since then. And like I said, I've been to a lot of those USAs over the last 25 years, and I do enjoy it, but the shows have gotten very, very long because of all the new classes.
Let's go to Charlie Boy 991. Dave, can water-based anabolics be mixed with oil-based test prop Winstrol suspension? Also, what's the deal with water-based Winstrol? Can you drink it? Thanks all the way from the UK.
You can drink Winstrol injectable because really all it is sterile Winstrol powder in water. So you can drink it. It's the same absorption. If you inject it, the liver is only subjected to one pass of the stuff. If you take it orally, it's got to go through your liver twice. So it becomes a little more liver toxic, the oral route. That's not a problem. And I'm trying to remember the question before. Oh, the oil and water. Yeah, you can mix like Winstrol with like test cypionate, which is oil and water. I think it was Jerry Scalisi who told me this back a long time ago. He's like, oh, just put it in the syringe and shake it up like it's like a salad dressing. You know how you have oil and vinegar salad dressing? Shake it in the syringe and it does. It mixes like salad dressing and then you just inject it. So it actually makes it easier for the Winstrol to go in because the oil-based product lubricates the tip of the syringe and it goes through there much more easily. Whereas sometimes if you just take Winstrol alone, it can clog the syringe.
Let me see if I can find one more. There was another one that I saw here. I think there was one I can't find. Okay, so Ross Flanagan 12. Fairly general question, but Dave, do you know why some bodies get leaner in certain areas and faster? The hormones, the genetics, the mix?
I just want to say Ross is doing the USA Championships. He's going to be a guy to watch out for on that USA stage. So hey, Ross, he's a client of mine. Some people just genetically harbor fat in certain areas. You see it in women a lot on their hips and thighs, some men around their lower back and abdominal region. And a lot of times that can be averted. A lot of times that's due to high estrogen levels in the body. It could also be due to not enough essential fatty acid consumption. Once you put the right amount of essential fats into the diet, you take those estrogen blockers, a lot of times those trouble areas will tighten up. But a lot of times it's genetic. Look, you could see a mother and her daughter and the grandmother all have the same butt, big butt. You know, it's genetic. You know, other times you could see people with like little butts. You know, 3 women, 3 generations have little butts. So how you look is your parents essentially. It sucks. I mean, as you get older, you start to look more and more like your parents. But you can't escape your own genetics. That's the truth. But you can alter them for certain with your diet. So if you get your diet on point, you take in the right nutrients you need, the right amount of protein, the right amount of fats and essential fatty acids, you don't overdo the carbs, you could overcome these genetic propensities to harbor fat in certain areas. Look at Evan Centopani. He was a fat kid. Not just an overweight kid, he was a fat kid. He don't look fat today anymore. He walks around lean all the time because he watches his diet.
One more question from Adam James Cooper. The difference between alpha-2 receptors and beta-2 receptors, and then he goes on with clen and yohimbine. Are these, what is the reason to use one over the other, and dosages for yohimbine and timings?
Yeah, that's a good question. Very good question. Beta receptors are found in 3 areas. There's 4 areas probably, but there's beta-1 receptors on the heart, okay? There's beta-2 receptors on the bronchial tubes of your lungs and on the blood vessel walls, and there's beta-3 receptors on your fat cells. When you stimulate beta receptors, you liberate what we call a neurotransmitter known as norepinephrine, which will increase fat burning if it's on the muscle cells, if it's on the fat cells. It will open up the airways if it's on the bronchial tubes, and it will open up the blood vessels if it's on your blood vessel walls. Clenbuterol is a beta-2 specific agonist or stimulant. So it only works on the bronchial tubes of the lungs. It only works on the blood vessel walls. So if you take clenbuterol, you notice you can breathe better and your blood pressure drops a little bit. Now, clenbuterol, they think, also has some beta-3 stimulation effect, which is why they think it burns fat so well. Beta blockers, if any of you take beta blockers, they're usually taken because to control heart rate. And generalized beta blockers like propranolol will slow the heart down, okay, will constrict vessels of the bronchial tubes, and will constrict blood vessels of the vasculature, okay, and that's why they could raise blood pressure a little bit. But usually they lower blood pressure because they lower heart rate. Alpha-2 receptors, when they're stimulated, they actually, believe it or not, they reduce the output of norepinephrine. And when they're blocked, they increase it. I know it sounds confusing. Yohimbine actually is an alpha-2 blocking agent. When you block alpha-2 receptors, okay, it increases norepinephrine output. Now, how does that help you? Well, alpha-2 receptors can be found on estrogen-dependent fat cells usually on the lower body. So a lot of women have a lot of estrogen-dependent fat, means they have a lot of alpha-2 receptors. When you block that with yohimbine and you release more norepinephrine, you can burn fat down there better. Theoretically. Does it work? In some people, yes, and in some people, no. Now, yohimbine as a side effect can also make you retain water because it increases a hormone known as vasopressin, or antidiuretic hormone. So it actually will make you retain water. So you really don't want to take that 2 weeks before a show. If you compare the fat-burning effects of clenbuterol to yohimbine, it's not even close. Clenbuterol is a way better fat burner than yohimbine, and yohimbine doesn't burn fat in everyone, only in some people. So if you're picking between one or the other, always choose clenbuterol.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Again, on speciesnutrition.com, Protolize, as part of our July 4th weekend sale, $19.99, limited time only, $19.99 for Protolize. For Johnny Styles and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.